Have you ever wondered how one nation can significantly shape the destiny of another? How did the British Raj mold India's future? There's something fascinating yet complex about the influence of the British Raj on India, an era that stretched from 1858 to 1947. This period introduced profound political, economic, and social transformations that have left an indelible mark on India's intricate tapestry. So, are you ready to delve into this riveting journey through time? Stay tuned as we embark on this historical journey. The year was 1858, a pivotal moment in history when the British Crown took control from the East India Company. With this shift, we witnessed the dawn of British Raj, a period that would forever change the landscape of India. The East India Company, a British trading firm, had been the ruling power in India since the early 18th century. They wielded their authority through a series of political maneuvers and military conquests. But as the mid-19th century rolled around, the company's grip on India began to falter. The pivotal turning point came in 1857 with the outbreak of the Indian Rebellion, a widespread revolt against the company's rule. In the wake of this uprising, the British government decided it was time to step in. The British Crown officially took over the reins from the East India Company in 1858, initiating the era of British Raj. The transition of power was far more than a mere change of hands. It marked an overhaul of the existing political structure. The British Crown instituted a centralized system of administration, headed by a Secretary of State for India, based in London, and a Viceroy in India. The Indian civil service was established, a bureaucracy that would become infamous for its exclusivity and dominance by the British. This new regime brought with it a slew of changes. The British Crown aimed to govern India more directly, more effectively. They implemented laws and policies designed to consolidate their control, such as the Indian Councils Act of 1861 and the Indian Penal Code. Yet, the establishment of the British Raj was not met without resistance. As the British tightened their grip on India, the seeds of nationalism began to sprout among the Indian populace. This burgeoning sense of identity and the desire for self-governance would play a crucial role in India's journey towards independence. So the sun rose on the British Raj in 1858, casting long shadows of change across India. The political landscape was drastically altered, setting the stage for a century of British rule. This marked the inception of a new era that would drastically transform India. The British Raj brought about significant economic transformations, some beneficial, others devastating. As the British set foot in India, they commenced a series of economic shifts that would forever alter the country's course. One of the most significant transformations was the introduction of railways. Imagine for a moment a vast subcontinent bound by the iron veins of railways. It connected distant corners of India, fostering trade, communication, and unity among diverse regions. The rail network played a pivotal role in knitting together an economically integrated market, which in turn contributed to the growth of various industries. However, the British Raj wasn't just about laying down tracks and girders. It also marked a period of deindustrialization for India. Before the British arrived, India was a booming hub of textile production, with its fine cotton and silk adorning markets across Asia and Europe. But as the British Raj set in, they sought to transform India into a raw material supplier for their own burgeoning industries back home. To achieve this, they imposed heavy tariffs on Indian textiles while flooding local markets with cheap machine-made textiles from Britain. This unfair trade practice led to the collapse of India's domestic textile industry, leaving millions unemployed and pushing the country into a state of economic dependency. Moreover, the British introduced new agricultural policies that prioritized cash crops, like indigo and tea over food crops. This shift disrupted local food security and led to several famines, the most notorious being the Great Bengal Famine of 1943, claiming millions of lives. But let's not forget that the British Raj also left behind an administrative and legal infrastructure that forms the backbone of modern India's governance. They established a uniform system of currency, weights, and measures, which streamlined trade and commerce. In hindsight, the British Raj was a mixed bag of economic transformations. It brought about infrastructural development, but at the cost of India's self-sufficiency and economic autonomy. India's economic landscape was forever changed. Societal norms were challenged. and the seeds of rebellion were sown. During the British Raj, India underwent a series of social reforms that reshaped the fabric of its society. The British authorities brought about changes that were, for the most part, intended to modernize India and align it with the Western world. One of the most significant reforms was the abolition of the cruel practice of sati in 1829. This age-old tradition involved a widow immolating herself on her husband's funeral pyre. The British government, led by Governor-General Lord William Bentinck, outlawed this practice, marking a significant step towards women's rights. In parallel, the British Raj introduced Western education to India. English became the medium of instruction and a new class of educated Indians emerged. This educated class was exposed to Western ideologies and concepts of democracy, equality, and liberty, which would later fuel the Indian struggle for independence. But as the British introduced these reforms, they also sowed the seeds of discontent and rebellion. The year 1857 marked the Indian Rebellion, the first large-scale revolt against British rule. A combination of social, economic, and political factors led to this uprising. The immediate cause was the introduction of new rifle cartridges rumored to be greased with cow and pig fat, a deeply offensive act to both Hindu and Muslim soldiers. This revolt was a turning point. It exposed the deep-seated resentment against British rule and showcased the collective strength of the Indian masses. Though brutally suppressed by the British, the rebellion of 1857 served as a stark reminder of the simmering discontent among the Indian populace. So, the British Raj, while bringing about some progressive social reforms, also ignited a wave of resistance. The societal changes and the uprisings during this period were not isolated events. They were interconnected, each influencing and shaping the other. These societal shifts and uprisings were the precursors to a larger freedom movement. In the coming scenes, we will delve into how these revolts and reforms paved the way for the long road to India's independence. As the 20th century dawned, the clamor for freedom grew louder. This was the era when the seed of independence sown years ago began to sprout, fueled by the courage and determination of countless freedom fighters. One name that stands tall in the annals of Indian history is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, fondly remembered as Mahatma Gandhi. He was a man of peace, a man of non-violence who believed in the power of truth, or satyagraha as he called it. His philosophy was simple and yet incredibly profound. He believed that non-violence could be a tool not just for resistance, but for active rebellion against the British Raj. Gandhi's most notable campaign was the non-cooperation movement, launched in 1920. This massive nationwide protest urged Indians to refuse to cooperate with the British Raj, to boycott British goods and institutions, and to live a life of self-reliance or Swaraj. The impact was immense, shaking the very foundations of British rule in India. A few years later, in 1942, another significant chapter in the fight for independence was written. The Quit India movement, also known as the August movement, was a call for the British to leave India, to quit India, once and for all. This movement, led by Gandhi and the Indian National Congress, echoed across the length and breadth of the country, uniting people in their common quest for freedom. The struggle was long and hard, the sacrifices countless, but the resolve of the people of India never wavered. They were driven by the dream of an independent India, an India free from foreign rule, an India where they could live with dignity and pride. This dream was realized on a momentous day in history. On August 15, 1947, India finally broke the shackles of British rule. The road to independence had been long and arduous, but the destination was worth every struggle. India had won her freedom, and the dawn of a new era had begun. Nearly a century of British Raj left an indelible mark on India's destiny. This is a sentiment we've explored throughout our journey today, delving into the intricate tapestry of history that was weaved during this era. We started at the dawn of the British Raj, a period of significant political change. The British introduced a centralized system of governance, bringing about a new level of administrative uniformity across India. This period also saw the emergence of modern political consciousness, which would later fuel the struggle for independence. We then examined the economic transformations that took place. The British rule catalyzed a shift from a predominantly agrarian economy to a more diverse one, marked by the growth of industries and railways. However, these changes were not without their downsides, as many traditional industries suffered and economic disparities widened. Our exploration also touched on the social reforms and uprisings that characterized this era. The British introduced several progressive legislations aimed at abolishing social evils, but their rule was also marked by numerous revolts and uprisings that reflected the people's discontent. Finally, we traced the road to independence, a journey marked by struggle, sacrifice, and an unyielding spirit of nationalism. This era culminated in India, finally shaking off the yoke of British rule in 1947. As we conclude this journey, we realize that the echoes of the British Raj still reverberate in modern India. The political, economic, and social landscapes of today's India have been profoundly shaped by this era, reminding us that history is not merely past, but a living, breathing entity that continues to shape our present and future.